Alright, so let's make a few changes to some decks and talk about what's going on in Ukraine, around the world. Because Connor Sapphire was asking me about that. First up, Ikrashidiki Isidar Kondo. This is my Super Life Gain Toughness Matters themed deck. So, except for 2 creatures, 2 Soul Sisters, and Daxos, but it's not going to be very long, every creature in the deck has higher toughness and power. So that way I can cast Wave of Reckoning. All the creatures can punch themselves in the fucking face, and my creatures will live. So I've got a lot of these creatures that make it so damage is done by toughness rather than power. What's odd is, so Bedrock Tortoise was recently printed, and it says creatures you control. Duran, the Siege Tower, the first one that did this, says all creatures. I think Huatli says each creature you control. What of Bashar? What does he say? There's a new card in the new Dragonstorm of Tarkir, whatever the hell the new Tarkir set is. I don't know. I don't keep up. That does that effect. He does some other shit too. Each creature you control. So it went from Duran affecting all the creatures. Duran says all creatures deal damage according to their toughness rather than their power. And then they changed it to only creatures you control for some reason. So anyway, what I'm doing is just a really simple change. The deck has no search. Not really, not for creatures. And I want to change that because I kind of rely on Duran. I kind of rely on Bedrock Tortoise, Bashar. Huatli is a planeswalker, so she's a bit harder to go find. I could just put in a Demonic Tutor, but I really don't want to do that. Rather just put in a more restrictive single-use tutor. I've got stuff like Meekstone. A lot of my creatures have power less than 2, because I'm planning on changing the combat math so my creatures deal damage according to their fat toughness. So, big, powerful creatures don't untap. Small creatures with weak power, they can untap. And if their damage is dealt by toughness, they hit pretty hard. So anyway, the change is pretty basic. This guy, he really doesn't, he's cool. I wanted a foil one a lot for a long time, and I finally got one, and now I'm going to take him out because he just doesn't do that much. The double green can be a bit hard to cast sometimes. So when he deals combat damage to a creature, destroy the creature in combat. Whenever deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. Well, he's probably not getting through with all the guys playing token decks. So let's take Oran Viper out for a Green Sun Zenith. Green Sun Zenith will let me find Bedrock Tortoise, let me find Duran the Siege Tower, let me find all kinds of cool things if I already have one of those in my hand or in play. And of course it shuffles itself back into my library, so I can do it again as long as it resolves. Alright. One change down, that's pretty easy. So anyway, something about Ukraine. There are about 12,000, about a division's worth, of North Korean troops. And a lot of people say, oh, it's because the Russians don't have enough men. Putin doesn't have enough men. He's got to get North Korea to help him. Yes, anytime somebody's in war, and somebody just comes along and says, hey, would you like some more troops? That's a welcome thing. America does it all the goddamn time. There has been none of America's misguided military ventures, with the exception of maybe Panama, maybe, was that stupid one Reagan did in the he invaded Grenada. He invaded Grenada. And you had Marines and Rangers, and basically the Cuban army that was there were construction workers. So, yeah, they didn't put up as much of a fight as would be expected from uniformed troops. They put up a fight that you'd expect from a bunch of construction workers there to build shit. So anyway, those North Korean troops, they're supplementing the Russians, but what they're really doing, a division's worth, is developing a cadre, a corps of seasoned North Korean veterans that are experienced in the latest iteration of modern war. Maybe I've talked about this before, I can't remember. So, they're going to go home to North Korea. Other men will rotate in and become veterans too, and they're going to teach everything they've learned to the rest of the North Korean army. Meanwhile, taking the long view, which Asian countries do, South Korea knows North Korea is doing this, and they've got a demographic problem. They've got the worst demographic problem in the world, because South Korea is dying. Their birth rate is the lowest of any nation in the world. So in a few decades, they're not going to have that many young men that can fight. They're going to have a bunch of old dudes, old women. In North Korea, they're declining too, let's be honest. Their population is shrinking, but it's not shrinking in the same rate as South Korea. So in a few decades, South Korea is still going to have a lot of young men of military age, capable and ready to fight, and South Korea is not. Not that either one of the Koreas really wants to go to war. The warmonger there is, of course, the United States of America. When the U.S. finally has to leave, finally has to butt out because it goes bankrupt and can't afford these stupid overseas military bases anymore, what's going to happen is Russia, China, North Korea, South Korea, and Japan are all going to say, America's gone. Maybe we should sit down and talk this out. And they're going to make peace. Be rough at first, a lot of distrust, but they'll get over it, and they'll make peace, and eventually Korea will unify. What kind of government it's going to be, who knows? But that's the future. That's what's coming. So, its next change is Kaervek the Merciless. Kaervek is a fun deck. The idea of the deck is to get Kaervek out as quickly as possible. Last Thursday, I got him out on turn 3. It was turn 1 land, turn 2 turn 1 Voltaic Key, turn 2 Grim Monolith. So I could tap the Monolith for 3, spend 1, use it on the key, untap the Monolith, and I've got, tap it again, I've got 5 colorless mana. So turn 3, Kaervek. He didn't live very long. Cube decided to take him out. And then we got overrun by Evgeny. And I was planning to use Kaervek to kind of control Evgeny, but Cube had other ideas. Sometimes you need to read the board. Sometimes you need to see what's going on and say, wow, that's a threat. But is it a threat to me? Or is this other thing over here, is this other guy, is he a bigger threat? And maybe if I just sit back and let the two threats pound on each other, then I can come out and finish them both off at the same time. I've seen that shit happen time and time again. So anyway, a cool, the Unrepentant. He is cool. I do like him. A 4-mana 5/5 flying trampler. That's fucking amazing. It's not amazing anymore. In fact, he's a junk rare. A 4-mana 5/5 flying trampler is now a junk rare. 20 years ago, even if he didn't have any other abilities, 20 years ago, this would have been a 20-euro card. It would have been like, holy fuck. And people would have built standard decks around him. They would have built extended decks around him. They would have like, go to town. And also, you could sacrifice the other creatures, and we put a creature card from hand on the battlefield. Activate only the sorcery. Only once per turn. The problem is, as cool as he is, So I played Kaervek, and I had in my hand. I couldn't get the double red. I couldn't fucking cast him. Next game, after a few turns, I drew him again, and I didn't have any big creatures in my hand to sacrifice creatures to get him out, and I didn't really have that much to sacrifice anyway. So he just kind of fell flat. So I'm going to take him out and put in something that Kaervek really needs. Oh, and by the way, this guy, this is Korath Knight. This is the German version. Korath. This guy, 3 black red hybrid for a 3/3 flyer. 5 mana for a 3/3 flyer. And you think, big fucking deal. That's shitty. You just showed us a 4 mana 5/5 flyer. What the fuck would we care about this guy? Because he says creatures your opponents control with counters on them cannot attack or block. Yeah. He stopped Tyranids cold. Cube was playing Tyranids, and in my opening hand I had drawn the Korath Knight, and I thought, yeah, I'm definitely not mulliganing him. What about the mulligan? So my last video, one of my shorts, somebody commented about the way I was mulliganing, and they said, you can't do that. You can't just pick cards you don't want, set them aside, draw to replace them, and shuffle as the cards in. Well, you can. It's called Pasha Paris. And maybe your group, you have combo players, and you don't want them doing that. You don't want them sculpting their hand. The way my group plays, we don't have combo players. We have guys that just want to be unmolested, minimally molested, until they build up an inevitable board state. That's the way they like to play. I kind of like playing that way too, sometimes, to be honest. But I also like playing, fuck around and find out. Different effects, discard, Kaervek, shit like that. I like to stir things up once in a while. So, taking out a cool, and I'm putting in this Rakdos Locket. 3 mana, you tap it, it's a rock. It's a 3 mana rock. 4 mana, I can sacrifice and draw 2 cards. I've got a Goblin Welder in here, so if I have another artifact, I can always weld it up by sacrificing another artifact and doing it again. So he needs card draw and he needs more mana rocks. Let's see how badly losing that 4 mana 5/5 flyer hurts me though. Well, this guy, I'm not blocking, I'm not risking him at all. If he's stopping Tyranids, no. He is in unexpendable. He is not an expendable creature. What else do I have with flying? So like I was saying, North Korea, they've got troops in Ukraine, but so does everybody else. Don't let anybody fool you. That can give the equipped creature flying, so that's pretty cool. So right now, they're making all this noise about these North Korean troops. What they're not making any noise about are the NATO troops in Ukraine fighting Russians directly. Make no mistake, there are fucking NATO troops in Russia, or in Ukraine. Probably some of them filtered into Russia too during those cross-border adventures that the Ukrainians did that are like, yeah, they're hitting Russia. And then they got wiped out. Because Russia doesn't like getting invaded. They have too much experience being invaded, and it pisses them off. So, anyway, as an example, okay, so I've still got a 5/5 flyer for 6, and if it dies, I get a benefit. A year or two ago, there was a U.S. Navy SEAL that was killed in Ukraine, fighting the Russians. The story is he deserted. Special forces do not desert. Special forces are carefully selected to follow orders, do as they're told, and be completely, utterly reliable. That's part of the selection process. My cousin told me when he was going through Ranger selection, if you just looked at one of the sergeants funny, if you looked like you were going to give them some lip or hesitate, you're out. Fuck off. We want people that do what they're told immediately, because of the shit that we do. If you don't do what you're told immediately, if you don't follow orders, people die. The mission fails. So that's what they want. They want people like that. Now I've got a 5-mana 5/4 flyer for double red. And also, a lot of the weapons that NATO has sent, so Kaervek's done. I'm going to take him out of this sleeve though, and I'm going to give him a different colored sleeve like I've started doing. I'll just do that now. Fuck it. What was I saying? I was talking about NATO, talking about special forces. Oh, the weapons. So all of the high-tech weapons that have gone in, the vaunted HIMARS, the British Storm Shadows, all of that shit, Ukrainians are not operating it, not directly. They might be pushing the last button, they might be pushing a few buttons, but NATO forces that own it, the British for the Storm Shadows, Americans for HIMARS, they're giving them the targeting information. They're loading the target packages. You know how I know this? When they sent the Gepards, so they were like, oh, they're getting these tanks. They're not fucking tanks, they're anti-aircraft platforms. It takes German crews in Germany a year to become proficient on a Gepard. The Ukrainians had a couple months. And that's just an anti-aircraft platform. A fucking high-tech, over-the-horizon missile launcher that requires a specific targeting package, requires specific training. No, they didn't have the training to do that. So there are NATO troops in Ukraine. A lot of officers have been killed, a lot of advisors, but it's what everybody's doing. Everybody that can go into Ukraine, every military in the world is doing it, because this is a hell of a way to get experience in the current iteration of modern war. I'm pretty sure I've talked about this before now that I mention it. Probably I should mention what I'm going to say next. In fact, during the American Civil War, Canada encouraged her men to go fight in the U.S. Civil War so they could develop a cadre of veterans. The reason they wanted a cadre of veterans in case the United States invaded again, because the U.S. had invaded Canada twice by that point, and the Canadians were like, yeah, these assholes are probably going to come at us again. Kind of like Russia feels about Germany. Yeah, these Krauts are going to come at us again. And the Krauts right now are making a lot of noises that, yeah, we're going to come for you again. And it pisses off the Russians. Amazing, you know, that's how that works. And this is a proxy war, make no mistake. This is not Russia invading Ukraine. If you hear anybody say this is just Putin's imperialism, he's just trying to rebuild the Soviet Union, ask them, okay, so why now? Why did he do it in 2023? What are you doing? 2022? When did the invasion start? I think 2022. Ask them why he did it then. And they won't have a good answer. None of them will have a good answer if they don't know the truth. Truth is, it's a proxy war. It was wonderfully executed by the United States. Russia has maneuvered into a position, and she kind of did it to herself. In 2014, when the U.S. ran that coup in Kiev, the coup that the Ukrainians call the Revolution of Peace and Dignity or some bullshit like that, it was a fucking coup. And the U.S. ran it, and they're proud of it. They were proud of it, and the U.S. Undersecretary of State, Victoria Nuland, there's a recorded phone call where she's picking the next Ukrainian government. She's handpicking the next Ukrainian prime minister. And the flunky she's talking to says, what about the EU? And she says, fuck the EU. Yats is the guy. So it was a coup. was engineered, and when that had happened, if Yanukovych had requested support from Russia, and Russia had honored the request and sent an airborne division to restore order in Kiev, it would have all been over. We would not have had this war. Germany would probably not be deindustrializing for lack of Russian gas, which he is rapidly doing. I've got a friend who reads the news about Germany a lot. Seems that every week, several dozen, maybe, several dozens, German mid-size businesses go under. German chemical industry is shutting down because they rely on natural gas for production of their product. German car manufacturers are shutting down for the same reason. And as the German economy falters, people don't have money and they can't buy stuff anyway. So that's where we put ourselves. Put ourselves in the situation because the United States cannot stomach a strong, independent Russia. They cannot stand the idea of Russia and Europe being at peace together. Because who's going to buy American weapons? Nobody. If Europe is at peace from Lisbon to Vladivostok. So they have to keep them separated. And they've managed to do that. Managed to do that in a big way. The kicker is, let me explain the changes. So SIG, I did changes just yesterday, but then I got to thinking about it, and I don't really have any artifacts that I care. If they go to if the swords go to the graveyard, I don't like it, but I don't need this to get them back. So I'm going to take out this land that produces colorless, Academy Ruins, and put it in a Temple of Deceit. So it's a black-blue, essentially dual land. It comes to play tapped, but it does produce both my colors. The other thing I thought about is I put in a lot of cards that make everybody discard, including me. So if I'm making everybody discard, and keep in mind I only have effectively 5 counterspells in the deck, so it's not saturated with them at all. If I'm making everybody discard, including me, I'm probably not going to have a counterspell when I want it. So I should take out the counter spells and rely more on counter creatures. So if I take out counter spell and I put in Glendylinda Archmage, that gives me an onboard negate, and I've got ways of bringing her back into the graveyard, so she's not just a one-trick pony. Counterspell, of course, is the only way I have of getting it. Well, I have 2 ways of getting it back now. I can shuffle it back in my library with Elixir of Immortality, or I can cast a Archaeomancer and put it back in my hand. Same with Disallow. Yes, I like the different options of Disallow. But I thought, what I want, I need a finisher. And I took out Tiny Bones. I took out the Tiny Bones that if I spend 6 mana, if I spend 4 colorless, black, each opponent with no hands in the card loses 10 life. The problem is, if I've got one guy at 0 life, and the other 2 guys each have a card in their hand because they've drawn for whatever reason, am I going to want to blow mana just to hit this guy for 10? What if he's not the threat? What if he's not the guy that I'm worried about? Right? How do I get the cards out of these other schmucks' hands so I can SIG everybody, or not SIG, Tiny Bones everybody? So I thought I'd just put it in Exsanguinate. So black, X. Each opponent loses X life, and again life equals to life loss this way. So this can be finisher, it can just be a way for me to get a shitload of life. The other thing I thought about, I have this card for the art. It's kind of peaceful, kind of cool. His thumb's a bit weird, the way it fits into his hand. This is Library of Ling. 1 mana artifact. So you must get the discard phase your turn. It now just, the new gather wording is, you have no maximum hand size. So Library of Ling, you have no maximum hand size, and if a card makes you discard, you can put it on top of your library rather than the graveyard. If it's a random discard, you can look at the card before deciding where to put it. Now, if I put this in, the deck becomes a bit more blue, a bit more control-ish, because I'm manipulating my fate. The question is, as always, what the fuck do I take out for it? I mean, counterspell for Archmage, that's kind of easy. Disallow for my finisher, it's not a stretch. But Library of Ling, so I don't want to take out any land. The deck has 37 land now, and that seems to be right at the right number, given that I've got 4 mana rocks. Do I take out a hostage taker? It can deal with a creature or an artifact. Urtai, he's one of my counter spells. One of the creatures that effects that make people discard. Oh fuck no. Venser the Bouncer. No, because I've got Heaven Go Lich. So Heaven Go Lich, I can spend 1 mana, I can flash him into play out of the graveyard, which I kind of like. That's pretty cool. I like that. Ashiok, well, blocking my opponents from searching the library can be pretty good, especially even if they're just searching for lands, even if they're just mana fixing, ramping. If I shut that down, then they've got less mana to try to cast their spells with, so they sit in their hand for me to make them discard. Do I take out a mana rock? That doesn't seem like a good fucking idea. Do I take out Sword of Sinnoh and Steel, maybe? I mean, destroy an artifact, I don't want to. Hibernation, well, I've had enough problems with my opponents playing green to know that that's pretty damn useful. So what do I take out? Don't want to take out a board wipe, because people will build up creatures faster than I can strip cards out of their hand from time to time. The real thing is, this deck doesn't have a win condition. It doesn't really win. It's very hard for it to win, because I'm relying on Megrim. Every time an opponent discards a card, they lose 2 life. Exsanguinate. My creatures are weak. I'm not going to do much damage to my creatures. What this deck really is an exercise in fuckery. I mean, it just gets at people when you're stripping cards out of their hand. They just don't like it, and I know why. I wouldn't like it either. Sometimes it's a real hard decision. Okay, everybody discard 2 cards. What the hell do I discard? Oh man, this is a tough choice. Ow. Ow, my ass. It's burning because of this choice. So I don't know what to take out for Library of Ling. I don't know if I should push it, or if I should just leave it alone, keep it as a card to consider, and just accept that I'm discarding with everybody else sometimes. Maybe that's the way to play it, but it is an option. And with that, let's close the video. We're right at about 30 minutes. So, what's the future of the Ukraine conflict? Nobody knows, because nobody knows how to make peace. Everybody's like, Russia should just leave Ukraine. Okay, how does that resolve the security issues that Russia invaded to resolve? How does that resolve the Donbass, which Ukraine was getting ready to invade brutally in order to reassert control over these renegade provinces, which triggered the Russian response? before Kiev started lining up troops and mobilizing. It fucking cut off. I don't know when it cut off. So before Kiev started mobilizing troops and heavy weaponry on the contact line, Russia was happy just to support Donbass with special forces, with military aid, but not uniformed troops in significant numbers. And then when they were threatening to massacre all the ethnic Russians in Donbass, that's when Russia invaded. Their hand was forced. Either invade or watch us pull a Gaza on your fucking border. And the Russians did not want Gaza on their border. So they responded, which is exactly what the United States wanted. Because then they could all whip up all the stupid Europeans that don't know what's going on. Oh, look, Russia's the aggressor. We provoke them. It's like you go into a bar and you've got a friend who's antagonizing two guys, and they start fighting, and he starts shouting, yeah, look, that guy's an asshole. He's just beating the shit out of this dude. Well, you put him up to it. You put him up to it, dude. So who's the real asshole here? Anyway, I don't know what. Maybe I should take a flare of denial. I don't know. I'll think more about it. Anyway, let's get this posted.